Well, this video is going to talk about Dylan Raiola. First things first, my voice is gone. Well, it's still recovering. Secondly, I recorded this video twice. StreamYard is giving me issues, would not switch my mic on. Recorded the video twice. This is my third time. Hopefully, I make it just as good. If you don't mind dropping a like, leaving a comment. I got this out later than I would have wanted, but let's go ahead and dive into it. Now, what I want to go over today is the things that make Dylan Raiola so special that fly under the radar. We hear national pundits talk about his efficiency, but talk about his changing of arm angles, some of the flashy plays he makes. But what are some of the nuanced things of the games that he does with his football acumen that lend to those things and his ability to be able to be in those positions and set the team up to win? Now, of course, when we're talking about Raiola and last year's team and the difference, we understood coming into the season what Raiola would have to do is protect the football. He didn't have to do too much. He doesn't have to light the world on fire. He needs to be an effective game manager. And that's what he's done so far. And when he's had to step up and make a big play, he has. When he doesn't have to, understanding the situation, he takes what the defense gives. And I'm going to get into a couple of those things and dive into them right now. And, let's talk about first thing that I recognize. I went back and watched the Colorado game back twice, and I was actually there. So taking away some of the things that I saw, not only at the game, but also, just when watching the game back. Now, one of the things that I did like is, his recognition of man on the outside. And what he did in those situations, he put the ball where either his guy could get it, nobody could get it, and or it was going to draw a penalty. We saw a couple of those on the right side with Banks and Nair. Now, Banks and Nair are two big body guys that you can trust to kind of go up and get 50-50 balls, especially on undersized defenders. And, when he threw that ball up to Nair, it was a good play by the DB. But he threw it underneath. And again, one of the things that does is it sets the defensive back in a bad position. He's not trying to throw it over the top so that way it runs the risk of being underthrown and or intercepted. He throws it underneath, and against Banks, it drew a PI. Now, the reason it puts the defender in a bad situation is he's not expecting it to come underneath usually, and the wide receiver can adjust to that. And if he has to go back towards the ball and the defender's impeding that progress, then in that situation, it would be a PI. But, he trusts that Jamal Banks can go up and, it's an 80-20 ball again, not a 50-50 ball with Jamal Banks. And Isaiah Nair knows how to use his body. He's a big body guy. Although he's a speedster, we know how big he is. He's just as tall as Banks, right? And so he knows how to utilize his players, and he knows what he's able to do without putting the ball in harm's way. Now, when talking about not putting the ball in harm's way as well, we talked about last year where we had a instance or a lot of instances where Nebraska was constantly backed up behind the chains, right? Or it was 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, 4th and 10. And what Raiola does is takes the underneath, takes what the defense gives. Now, I'm going to dive into a little bit more of an in-depth perspective of that because that's obvious, right? Taking what the defense gives. But what does he do so well with that? Well, what does that do for you even? And he understands the situation, right? The first half, he was taking the underneath play, but knew when to push the ball up the field to get a first down. What he did was he really lived to fight another down. He tried to stay at the line of scrimmage or in front of the line of scrimmage. And in taking what the defense gives, he put themselves in a better position or put the team in a better position, even field position on 3rd down, taking the underneath, even understanding that, his player wasn't probably going to get the first down, but he gives them an opportunity to. And in that instance, it keeps the clock moving, but it also puts you in a better situation to where if you need to make a decision and or, those few extra yards matter. Every single yard matters. You look at the Buschini punt, right? The Buschini punt right there, that was a perfect distance type of thing, right? And so it puts your team in a better situation. And in the second half, what does it do? Well, we knew there was some time management issues last year. You look at the Iowa game and just how close that was in terms of just the matter of seconds that dictated the end of that game. So Dylan understands when he needs to push it down the field, when he needs to kind of take the underneath, because what that also does is it keeps the clock moving in that second half. And he didn't light it up in the second half, but of course he didn't have to. But also that had a lot to do with just the conservative game plan, the limited possessions, the amount of penalties keeping out of a rhythm, and that allowed the Colorado defense to kind of get some rest periodically. But it broke up every rhythm, every bit of rhythm in the second half. The clock just seemed to drain and melt, and that was because that was the game plan. They wanted the clock to drain and melt. They didn't want the penalties and the rhythm to be broken up, but they just wanted to keep that clock moving and not give an opportunity for Colorado to make a couple of explosive plays in the return, because that game could turn quickly if they, make a couple of big explosive plays. So he understood that he needs to just keep that clock moving, make the right decision, and just find his guy and let his guy make a play if they're going to make a play. And that's what he needs to do, and that's what he does well. Another thing that he does well, I've talked about this before, but CJ Stroud, when talking about CJ Stroud, his first 2 weeks in the NFL, he was interviewed about this. Now, the first 2 weeks in the NFL and in the preseason, he struggled. What he said is there's an understanding of the game that he had to learn, and he compared it to a spot-up NBA jump shooter, right? What does a spot-up jump shooter in the NBA do? He comes down the court, right, reads the defense, and he knows where his spots are that he needs to get to based on what the defense is doing. Are they 2-3 zone, 3-2? What are they doing? They manned up. And the recognition of that is what makes jump shooters so good. They're really good at reading those concepts, getting to their spots. Now, the way that translates over into football, think about the pocket. And, what the couple spots that CJ Stroud mentioned is when you need to step up in the pocket, of course, when you need to step up and out in the pocket, and when you need to roll around. If you look at what a lot of Shedeur did, is Shedeur Sanders runs straight backwards, right? He doesn't get to his spots. And so that caused him to be chased down. And when you're getting chased down, it's hard for you to make a play, especially when you're running backwards and running all over the place. Your feet are not set. So what did Raiola do? He went out there, and when you saw a sliver, let's say the contains, kind of came down, the tackles were pushing the ends around, and the inside of the interior line, defensive line for Colorado wasn't getting that pressure. Well, that left a little gap. And what he did well was he was able to sneak through that gap. And what that does and move the pocket right. And what that does is it makes those defenders, have to turn around and go after him. And if he recognizes that's out there and that nobody's out there waiting for him, and it's going to take them a second to get out there, or they're going to have to make a decision between him and the running back if they do not have a spy, which they typically won't on Dylan Raiola, most likely. And that also allows him to get out there and be able to set his feet because he's not getting run down, chased down, set his feet, make a play, extend the play, and also, live to fight another down if he has to. And also, when he needs to roll out of the pocket, he does that. That doesn't happen a lot where he needs to roll out of the pocket, but when he does, getting out and around before those tackles really kind of condense you in and compress you in, and that gives time for those interior defenders to also get through, people to get in the backfield. And like I said, it's a bad day. That's some of the nuances to his game that set him up for a lot of those, being able to make those underneath plays, being able to make those smart decisions, but it also keeps him from getting hit, especially, when the play execution broke down. Let's talk about the play execution on those couple of plays where he kind of had to just kind of lay down at the line of scrimmage. I think there was one in the first, one in the second half. So when that happened, it looked like a lot of the team was thinking run play and Raiola was running a pass play. And I don't know where the communication broke down there, but what did he do? He rolled right and got down. What's the importance of that, right? He doesn't try to do too much, doesn't try to take an unnecessary hit, doesn't try to force anything. He lives to fight another down. And the biggest thing, he doesn't take a hit, right? He's very good at making sure he doesn't take hits. And that is one of the most important things, because we talk about the drop off between Dylan Raiola and the rest of the quarterbacks. his health, maintaining his health is going to be the biggest thing. And when we get into Big Ten play and those guys start being a lot more physical, that's really going to help him sustain his body, keep him from getting sore. CJ Stroud said he felt beat up after week 2. And then we saw what he did the rest of the season, right? And that's a simple concept there, but it's a big thing to understand and navigate. And the fact that he's understanding that part of the game at such a young age, that is massive and will only pay dividends and help him in the future as he grows to be a better quarterback. Again, he hasn't had to light the world on fire. He's not doing too much. He's doing what he needs to do to help this team win. And, DJ Lagway, he threw for, over 300, 400 yards against Samford. And the PFF grades actually came out, and Dylan Raiola was graded ahead of him by 0.1, even though, the stats were a lot less and people were talking about under 200 yards, et cetera. But that's because he did what he had to do to win the game. Lagway turned it over. Dylan Raiola did not. And I think the reason why Dylan Raiola is such a good fit for Nebraska, he cares about the program and he's willing to do what it takes to win. He's out there on the field. He trusts his defense. If they need to punt, he's willing to take that underneath, give them a little bit of field position to get the punt off, understands that he doesn't have to force it because, we have a lead, or I trust my defense to go out there and get me the ball back and make a play. That trust in the quarterback, that trust in the defense, that is such a huge part of this. And Dylan Raiola understands that because when he's on the field, hyping his teammates up, giving everybody high fives. I noticed this at the game. He was on the sideline just really kind of, keeping that energy up and really, giving the people around him credit. He's a great teammate and he understands that people help him be good, but also a lot of it is his doing. But he won't admit to those things. He'll give everybody around him credit and understands his role in this team, understands his job. And that's not to say he can't light it up. I'm sure when he has to, he absolutely will. But he hasn't had to so far. Protect the lead, get the clock, get out of there, and get out of there with the win. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about wins, not stats. And it's great to have a quarterback that understands that and also understands the game of football at such a young age and at a high level. Last thing I was thinking of, and this is very, interesting. I was just thinking about this the night before, I went to sleep before the Saturday game. And I was thinking about just kind of how the anxiousness and the anxious, nervous anxiety is for us the night before and leading up to the game as fans. Now, imagine being an 18-year-old kid and having to deal with that or think about that at night and all that next day and how much pressure is on you. The world's watching. There's a lot of weight and stock put into this game. Nebraska really needed to win this game to show that they've taken that step. And he came out poised, calm, cool, collected, fired up the crowd, didn't really shy away from any moment because he understands that when you prepare, then there's nothing to worry about. The second you start doubting yourself, it's probably because you didn't prepare well enough. If you've done everything you need to do to ensure that you're ready for that game and you put 100% effort into your preparation, there's nothing to worry about. You did everything you could to be ready for that game. And you did everything in your power to will the team to victory. And that shows just his preparation. And when they were talking about, Satterfield was talking about his execution and the other guys around him need to be better. That's also going to help the other guys around him be better because he can prepare them and really kind of help grow this offense as the season goes along. But you got to love the leadership, the way he talks, and also just, his understanding of the defense, his understanding of getting to his spots, his understanding of where to put the football to where he, his team can get it or nobody can get it, or it's going to draw pass interference, take the underneath, get to your spot, etc. He is a special talent, not only for his arm strength, but his ability to do all of the things well that quarterbacks really have to learn the hard way over time, typically. And that's going to make him special, and that's going to make him a perfect fit for Nebraska. And that's why the sky is the limit with this team moving forward. Now, Of course, this is my third time recording this video. So if you don't mind dropping a like, leaving a comment to help me out a little bit in the algorithm, that would be greatly appreciated. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hopefully my voice is getting a little bit better tomorrow and the next day, but I appreciate y'all for sticking through this with my raspy voice, and I appreciate everybody, and I will see you in the next video.